Hello, you are most welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Real Impartation Moment on Tuesday Night Anatomy with Daniel Okwan. Today's section, I quickly run with you the fascial planes of the neck. Of course, we know that the neck is also known as the cervix as far as the various regions of the body is concerned. But more importantly, yes, I will focus more of my energy on the deep cervical fascia, because of course, essentially the superficial fascia, of the neck, yes, is essentially fatty, just like any other fascia that we have in the rest part of the body. Yes, subcutaneous tissue. But of course, we know that although there's variable amount of fat, it is usually less compared to other regions of the body. And so at the end of this section, we should be able to really describe the fascial planes of the neck, mainly looking at the various layers of the deep cervical fascia. And so without much ado, let's set the ball rolling. So there we are, now beginning with the first fascia that I want to talk about, although I won't spend my time over here. The first fascia that I want to talk about is what we call the superficial cervical fascia. Of course, the word cervix has to do with the neck, so we are looking at the superficial fascia of the neck. My friends, when I take away the skin, we know that skin is made up of epidermis and of course dermis. Once I take these two out, then what will happen is that deep to it, I see a fatty tissue over there, yes, beneath the skin. And my friends, that fatty tissue is nothing but the superficial fascia of the neck. And so it means that, yes, variable amount of fat will be in here. Yes, that's what we see. And one important thing I want to tell you here is that there's one muscle which is one of the panniculus canusus muscles that we have in the human body. Yes, so that when it contracts, it causes wrinkling in the neck region. My friends, that flat muscle is what we call the platysma. Yes, muscle. Okay, so that is one thing that you have to know. One thing you should know is that it is invested, or it is dwelling within the superficial fascia. Then apart from that, yes, one thing that we find is that there will be one vein over there which we call it the external jugular vein. My friends, not only the external jugular vein, because one thing that we know is that when we learned about, of course, the relations, some important muscle, nerves that run through the substance of the parotid gland. Yes, we talked about one being a cervical branch of the facial nerve. Yes, that cervical branch is doing nothing, but it is coming downwards all the way to come and supply this platysma. So it means that the cervical branch of the facial nerve, yes, alongside the platysma, external jugular vein, yes, will dwell in this superficial fascia, yes, of the neck, which is fatty. But my friends, not only that, it makes sense that we also find some superficial, yes, lymph nodes, yes, in the neck region. So that is, one thing that we have to know, alongside, of course, some lymphatic, vessels. Okay, so that is one thing I want you to know. My friends, when I take away this superficial fascia, then deep to it, I will have what we call a deep cervical fascia. My friends, deep cervical fascia is worth mentioning, it's worth studying, because it's having 3 layers, that you have to know. Because all these layers have some important relations which we need to really learn about them. So my friends, this was the extent to which was having the superficial fascia. Now we've cut the superficial fascia, taking it away alongside the platysma muscle. Therefore what I have over here deep to it is the first layer of the deep cervical fascia. And so the first layer of the deep cervical fascia, because it's closer to the superficial fascia, or because it's closer to the skin, then what will happen is that it becomes the superficial layer of the deep cervical fascia. My friends, listen to this very well. Now you looked at the superficial fascia of the neck, that's fine. Now once we cut the superficial fascia, then deep to it we will have what we call the deep cervical fascia. But what we are saying is that if you look at the deep cervical fascia, it is having 3 layers. One is more closer to the skin, or more closer to the superficial fascia. Therefore it becomes the superficial layer of the deep cervical fascia. And one thing that I want you to also know is that, yes, this layer is also known as the investing layer of the deep cervical fascia. Now, the reason why we are calling it investing layer, where I've highlighted in yellow only, yes, this one, the investing layer of the deep cervical fascia, is so called because it is investing 2 important muscles which are important, yes, as far as the triangles of the neck. More important, the posterior triangle of the neck, yes, form the boundary of the posterior triangle of the neck. I have this muscle which is known as the sternocleidomastoid muscle. Okay, this is the sternocleidomastoid muscle alongside, of course, the trapezius muscle. These two muscles, they, oh yes, alongside other muscles, but these are the more important muscles that we want to talk about. That is the, of course, the sternocleidomastoid alongside the trapezius muscle. And close within this, superficial layer of the deep cervical fascia, and therefore we calling it the, of course, investing layer of the deep cervical fascia. So that is one thing I want you to know. By way of this attachment, what we see is that, of course, there's the body of the mandible. So it's attached to the mandible. Yes, not only that, it will also be attached to what we call the hyoid bone. My friends, the hyoid bone is over here. So this deep, investing layer of the deep cervical fascia, or the superficial layer of the deep cervical fascia, yes, has some attachment to, of course, the hyoid bone. Okay, of course, we know the hyoid bone is the only bone which does not articulate with any other bone in there. Okay, so that is what we find. But not only that, yes, even the zygomatic arch, yes, is having some attachment, to it. Not only that, even the external occipital protuberance, what we normally call the inion, yes, it's also having some attachment to it. But more importantly, what I want you to know is that over here, this, investing layer of the deep cervical fascia also invests this gland, which is over here, which is the parotid gland. My friends, not only the parotid gland, but also the submandibular gland. The submandibular gland, alongside of what the parotid gland, they are also invested in this investing layer of the deep cervical fascia. Okay, and that is why, of course, the false capsule of this parotid gland, yes, is contributed by this investing layer of the deep cervical fascia. My friends, one important thing is that in the temporomandibular joint, those of you who have not watched the video regarding the temporomandibular joint alongside the muscles of mastication that I've done already. Now, one thing that you are missing out is that I told you that there were two muscles which you call them the false ligament of the temporomandibular joint. Okay, because of course they were not directly reinforcing the joint, but one important thing is that they were actual modifications of what you call the investing layer of the deep cervical fascia. And what were these ligament? One of them was the stylomandibular ligament. My friends, the stylomandibular ligament, very important, yes, together with, of course, the sphenomandibular ligament, they are, of course, what you call the false ligament of the temporomandibular joint. But more importantly is the stylomandibular ligament. Right now you can't see that unless you visit that video. The stylomandibular ligament, what it's doing is that it separates what we call the parotid gland from what we call the submandibular gland. Okay, so that is one thing that you have to know. By way of the inferior extent, by way of the inferior attachment of this investing layer of the deep cervical fascia, okay, one thing that we find is that, yes, not only the acromion of the scapula will later attach you, but also the spine of the scapula. Yes, it will do that kind of attachment over there. Okay, so this is the first layer, okay, or the superficial layer of the deep cervical fascia, which otherwise we want to call it the investing layer of the deep cervical fascia. So that is the first one. Now, my friends, if we take a transverse section, yes, through the cervical region of the body, through the neck, then what will happen is that I want to show you some other things. The next fascia that I want to talk about is what we call the pretracheal fascia. My friends, I want to show you the pretracheal fascia. Now, we are going from superficial to deep. Yes, we said that the superficial one was the investing layer of the deep cervical fascia. Why? Because it was investing some important muscles alongside other structures. But the more important, we talk about the sternocleidomastoid muscle. Yes, not only that, we also talked about what we call the trapezius muscles, which were important, forming important boundaries to, of course, the posterior triangle of the neck. This time around, I'm looking at beyond the investing layer, where the superficial layer, I go to the middle layer or the intermediate layer of what we call the deep cervical fascia. My friends, that is what we call the pretracheal fascia. Pretracheal fascia, importantly. Now, yes, why do we call it pretracheal fascia? The reason is simple, because one thing that we know is that behind this fascia we have what we call the esophagus. Okay, the esophagus is going to be there, and what will happen is that the trachea, the trachea is going to be there, and what is going to happen is that, yes, this trachea will provide a slippery surface for that kind of up and down sliding, movement, okay, Yes, during of course swallowing, and as alongside other cervical movement. That is what we find. That is why this muscle we want to this fascia, okay, we want to call it the pretracheal fascia. Pretracheal fascia. One thing I want to show you is that yes, as we move on, I'll show you in other images that it is confined to the anterior aspect of the neck only. It doesn't go to the posterior aspect. Okay, it doesn't go to the posterior aspect. So this is the pretracheal fascia. But my friends, there's a catch over here. The pretracheal fascia has two layers. It has what we call a visceral layer. Okay, so the visceral layer, now you can see that this fascia goes around and it invests what we call the thyroid gland. My friends, not only the thyroid gland is the only viscera, yes, that is invested by this gland, but also yes, even the larynx. Yes, the larynx will be just above the trachea, so the larynx is there. Not only that, even the pharynx, but alongside the parathyroid gland, because in the posterior aspect, okay, of this thyroid gland, we find these parathyroid glands over there. Okay, yes, in human beings we have about 4 of them. These parathyroid glands are also within this kind of tracheal fascia, the visceral layer of the pretracheal fascia. But not only that, not only do we have the visceral layer, but we also have the parietal layer. Now, whenever we talk about parietal, it has to do with wall. Now, these muscles, there are some muscles which are forming the wall of this neck region. Okay, and one of them is these are what we call the strap muscles, the infrahyoid muscles, the muscles which take attachment, okay, on what we call the hyoid bone, but they go downwards, okay, below the hyoid bone. So we call them infrahyoid muscles, the strap muscles. And my friends, yes, we know some of these strap muscles. We talk about the thyroid muscle, we talk about the sternothyroid muscle, we talk about the stenohyoid, and of course the omohyoid muscles. Okay, these are what we call the strap muscles. They are invested in the parietal layer, okay, of what we call the pretracheal fascia. Okay, so that is one thing I want you to know. All right, now the next one that I want to talk about is the one I've highlighted in yellow only over here. This guy is the prevertebral fascia. So we've moved away from the superficial layer of the deep cervical fascia, which we call it, of course, the investing layer of the deep cervical fascia. Then the second layer, which is the middle layer, the intermediate layer of the deep cervical fascia, being, of course, the tracheal fascia. And then finally, I told that the pretracheal fascia was confined to the anterior aspect of the neck only. Okay, because by way of orientation, you see that there's a spine, okay, of a vertebra. Therefore, cervical vertebra gets backwards posteriorly, and there's the front aspect, because of course you have the body of the cervical vertebra over here, C6 body. Okay, so it means that yes, if this will be the anterior aspect, and this is the posterior aspect. Okay, now this time around, confine itself in the posterior aspect of the neck. Okay, is what we call the vertebral fascia. Now, some books want to call it perivertebral fascia. The reason is that it goes all around over here, okay, around the vertebra. So we want to call it peri. They want to always talk about the anterior aspect of this, perivertebral fascia to be the prevertebral fascia. So, that kind of thing. If you see that, yes, look at that one again. My friends, the name is prevertebral fascia because yes, not only is it enclosing, okay, or perivertebral, the spine, but also the muscles that are related to the spine or to the vertebral column. Okay, and what are these muscles that we are talking about? Yes, my friends, we are talking about these muscles, of course, the levator scapulae, okay, splenius capitis, semispinalis. Yes, alongside what we call, I will talk about the scalenus muscles. Yes, of course, scalenus anterior, scalenus medial, scalenus posterior muscles. They are all finding attachment to, of course, the spine. So these muscles, yes, they are all enclosed within this, prevertebral layer of what we call the deep cervical fascia. In other words, all these muscles, okay, they are separated from this esophagus that we find over here through this kind of prevertebral fascia. Okay, so that is, one thing that I want you to know. But my friends, there will be a catch. I'll show you that catch about this prevertebral fascia, because anteriorly, yes, in front of the body, yes, what will happen is that this fascia was split into two. I'll show you in another image. Yes, now one thing is that we've seen these layers. We've seen that yes, we have regarding the deep cervical fascia, we have the investing layer. We have, of course, the middle layer being the pretracheal fascia, and then we have the deepest layer being, of course, the prevertebral fascia. Now all these fasciae, what will happen is that they fuse, so to speak. They fuse and they form what we call the carotid sheath. Okay, in the carotid sheath, I will show you all these relations pretty soon. So they form what we call the carotid sheath, this tubular sheath, which will enclose some important neurovascular structures. And what are these important neurovascular structures? To the lateral aspect, yes, more laterally, I have what we call the internal jugular vein. And then toward the medial aspect, I have what we call the, common carotid artery. But not only the common carotid artery, at the superior portion, apical portion of this, canal or carotid sheath, I have what we call the internal carotid artery. External carotid artery goes out. So it means that external carotid artery is not a content of this carotid sheath. My friends, the only nerve, okay, that we find it over here by most books, although there's a catch over here, because one thing is that the nerve that we find over here is, of course, the vagus nerve. The 10th cranial nerve is over here, but that one is located at the posterior aspect. It goes more posterior. So as you can see over here, there's anterior, there's posterior. At the posterior aspect contained within this sheath, I have what we call the vagus nerve. To, of course, the medial aspect, I have the common carotid artery. Towards the lateral aspect, I have internal jugular vein. Okay, so that is what we see. But my friends, okay, in the upper and uppermost portion of this sheath, we have some, nerves, cranial nerves, which traverse the sheath, okay, forwards and backwards. And my friends, those nerves which traverse the sheath forward and backwards at the most cranial portion of this carotid sheath, yes, they will include, of course, the 9th nerve, the glossopharyngeal nerve, of course, the 11th nerve, of course, the accessory nerve, and of course, the 12th nerve. And my friend, the 12th nerve is, of course, the hypoglossal nerve. But these are not usually the content of the carotid sheath, but they are found in the most apical portion of the sheath as they traverse, backwards and forwards. Okay, that's what you see. Now there's another important relation which I also discussed this again. Now in front of it, okay, we have what we call in front of the cervical, the carotid sheath, we have what we call the ansa cervicalis. Part of course, the cervical plexus, we have the ansa cervicalis running in front of what we call the carotid sheath. But running behind the carotid sheath, I have what we call the sympathetic chain. Yes, from the trunk over the sympathetic chain will be there. Okay, so that is what we find. Okay, that is one important thing that I want you to know regarding. Yes, so it means that this carotid sheath is also a modification of the deep cervical. Because I've told you that when all these fasciae, when they meet or when they fuse, then they form this kind of, fascia only. Now, there's some kind of important relations which you have to know. Now, the first thing is that now I see that there will be a lot of fatty adipose tissue over here. That kind of adipose, once I see, look at wherever Kaiser is running, once I see an adipose tissue filled environment just below the skin, then I know that I'm looking at the superficial fascia, okay, of the neck. Then now what you see is that yes, the fat is variable. So what you see is that even at the posterior aspect, there's more fat over there compared to the anterior aspect. Okay, so that is one relation that we find. Now, I told you that the muscle that is invested within it is that flat muscle which confines itself in the anterior aspect of the neck. And my friends, that flat muscle, okay, is the platysma. I also told you that yes, alongside of course the nerve which will be supplying the platysma, that's the cervical branch of the facial nerve. Not only that, the external jugular vein. We'll run through it. Yes, alongside some other superficial lymph nodes and lymphatic vessels over there. But my friends, when I take away this superficial fascia alongside the platysma, then deep to it, I have the deep cervical fascia. My friends, the deep cervical fascia, the first layer which is closer to the skin, becomes of course the superficial layer of the deep cervical fascia. Can you see that? Now running all behind, everywhere in the neck region. Okay, but one thing is that it includes some two important muscles which are worth mentioning, and those important muscles, yes, they are what we call the sternocleidomastoid muscle, alongside of course the trapezius muscle. Yes, sternocleidomastoid towards the anterolateral aspect, and then trapezius more towards the posterior aspect. Okay, that is what we see. Okay, so that is the first thing. And we said that this, deep cervical fascia, yes, will form, of course, will include alongside the thyroid, will include the parotid gland, the submandibular gland, and that is why the ligament which will be separating them will be the stylomandibular ligament, a modification of the deep cervical fascia, okay, which of course is also forms part of the false ligament of the temporomandibular joint. Okay, so that is, I mean, one thing that we should know. But more importantly, once I take away this, this is the investing layer of the deep cervical fascia, then I go to what we call the pretracheal fascia. Pretracheal fascia. But I told you that the pretracheal fascia, there's a catch over there, because usually when we talk about pretracheal fascia, we're talking about the visceral layer, because of course some important viscera by way of the thyroid gland, okay, by way of the larynx, by way of the pharynx, alongside of course the posterior aspect of the thyroid gland, we have the parathyroid gland. They are included within this tracheal fascia. But my friends, all these guys which are included in this pretracheal fascia, the viscera, okay, they form a layer. That layer is called the pretracheal fascia, the visceral layer of the pretracheal fascia. Okay, that's one thing. But alongside, in front of it, okay, we have some muscles which are also included in this fascia only. Okay, those muscles, we call them the infrahyoid muscles, the strap muscles. Okay, and of course we talk about the stenohyoid muscles, stenothyroid muscle, omohyoid. Yes, all those muscles which are included, okay, in the parietal layer of what we call the pretracheal fascia. And that is why some books may want to call this parietal layer the infrahyoid fascia. So my friends, in case you see it infrahyoid fascia, you are still talking about a parietal layer of the pretracheal fascia. Okay, and therefore a modification of the deep cervical fascia. Okay, that's an important thing we should know. So that's the intermediate layer, and of course the deepest layer. Okay, and I told you that this pretracheal fascia is confined to the anterior aspect only of the neck only, unlike the investing layer which goes all around. Okay, investing everything over here. But at the posterior aspects, okay, moving around the vertebrae, okay, in the neck cervical vertebrae, we have this layer over here, and my friends, this layer is the prevertebral fascia. I told you that some books want to call it the perivertebral fascia because it goes all around it, so that we want to call on the anterior portion the prevertebral, because it comes before this vertebrae, prevertebral fascia. Okay, that's one thing we should know. Now, you may also want to call this one the pretracheal fascia because it comes, yes, in front of what you call the vertebra, the trachea. Okay, these are some kind of logic things that we can make out of these things. My friends, one thing that I told you, which I said I will show you, is that this third layer, or the deepest layer of the deep cervical fascia, being the prevertebral fascia, okay, anteriorly, okay, along where we have the body, okay, anterolaterally a bit, yes, what will happen is that it splits into two. It splits into two, giving rise to this portion, okay, the more anterior portion, where is the alar fascia, or the anterior lamina, and of course this one becomes the posterior lamina, okay, of the the prevertebral fascia. And therefore there's a small space that is created over here, which we want to call it retropharyngeal space. Yes, retro means behind. Yes, behind, of course, the pharynx. So retropharyngeal space. My friends, one thing is that unlike the abdomen and of course the thorax, where there's diaphragm separating them, the neck and the thorax, there's no diaphragm. Okay, that's an important thing we should know. There's no diaphragm. And that is why, yes, this space becomes one of the dangerous spaces, okay, in the body. So that what will happen is that if there's any infection, then it can spread from the neck region, yes, and run towards, of course, the diaphragm. Okay, that's one thing that you have to know. Because, my friends, what will happen is that this space that you find over here, which is, of course, the retropharyngeal space, what will happen is that, yes, it extends all the way from the base of the skull all the way to the diaphragm. Okay, because there's no abdominothoracic diaphragm that I'm talking about. I'm not talking about there's no diaphragm in the neck region. Okay, so that is what we see. My friends, there are important relations. I told you that all these fasciae, by way of the investing layer of the deep cervical fascia, by way of course, the what you call the pretracheal fascia, by way of course, the prevertebral fascia, all of them are contributing, okay, to form this fascia that we find over here, which we call it the carotid sheath, and therefore a modification of the deep cervical fascia. Okay, that's what you should know. And we said that towards, now this is for your orientation, this is the anterior aspect, this is the posterior aspect. I can see the vertebrae, this is the body, which goes anteriorly, and of course the spine, or the spinal process, which goes posteriorly. Okay, so it means all those muscles over here, which you find it having some kind of attachment, okay, to, of course, the vertebrae, okay, they become what we call the prevertebral muscles, okay, and therefore they are all enclosed within this sheet. Now what do I want to show you is that all these guys, they are contributing to it, okay, to forming this kind of sheet, carotid sheet. All these three fascia we talk about, and we said that towards the medial aspect we have what we call the carotid, a common carotid artery, which of course continue as the internal carotid artery. External carotid artery goes outside, okay, it's not part of the sheet. Then of course we have what we call internal jugular vein. Then we also have the vagus nerve. But I told you that the vagus nerve at the most cranial portion, yes, we will have what we call, not only that, we also have the 9th nerve, we also have the 11th nerve, and of course 4th nerve traversing the sheet. Okay, so that is what we see. But my friends, one important thing is that, yes, usually when we look at this now, look, this is the transverse process of the cervical vertebrae. Okay, now what we see is that the nerve that the muscle that we find over here, okay, in front over here, becomes what we call scalenus anterior muscle. Okay, and then of course behind it we have the middle scalene, or the scalenus medius, and of course scalenus posterior muscles. Okay, that is what we see. Usually we talk about the vagus nerve and phrenic nerve running, of course, in front of this, scalenus anterior. But my friends, there's a catch. What we find is that this, vagus nerve is found confined to what we call the carotid sheath. But my friends, this guy over here, just behind that, I have another nerve over there, and my friends, that nerve is what we call the phrenic nerve, behind the vagus nerve, but a bit lateral. Okay, lateral to it, we have what we call the phrenic nerve. Okay, so that one, yes, will be found in front of what we call will be found in front of the scalenus anterior, but enclosed within, of course, the investing layer of the deep cervical fascia. Okay, that is what we see. But not only that, yes, I have nerves that we find in between the scalenus anterior and scalenus medius. We have what we call the brachial plexus over there. Okay, so as you can see, the spinal nerve. But my friends, the sympathetic chain, yes, finds itself at the medial aspect, posterior medial aspect of the carotid sheath. But exactly posterior, we have, and remember that the sympathetic chain, or the sympathetic trunk, okay, is found in front of what we call the pre-vertebral fascia. Okay, it's found in front of it, but find itself within the fascia is what we call the phrenic nerve. Okay, so that is, some kind of important relations that we have to know. All right, so what have we seen? We've seen, of course, the superficial fascia. Once I cut the superficial fascia, I have the investing layer of the deep cervical fascia. Okay, and then beyond that, I will also have what we call the tracheal fascia, which will have a parietal layer and of course a visceral layer. And not only that, yes, I will also have the prevertebral fascia, and all of them will be fused, and that will be the deepest layer to form this carotid sheath, okay, which will contain those important vascular structures. I hope you find this meeting helpful. I'm very grateful for your time this evening. Have a good night, all of you, and may the good Lord richly bless you. Amen.